We slept in what had once been the gymnasium. The floor was of varnished wood with stripes and circles painted on it for the games that were formerly played there. A balcony ran around the room for the spectators, and I thought I could smell the pungent scent of sweat shot through with perfume from the watching girls, felt skirted as I knew from pictures, later in miniskirts, then pants, then in one earring with spiky hair. There was old sex in the room, and loneliness, an expectation of something without a shape or name. I remember that yearning for something that was always about to happen and was never the same as the hands that were on us there and then in the small of the back or out in the parking lot or in the television room with the sound turned down. We yearned for the future. How did we learn it, that talent for insatiability? It was in the air. And it was still in the air, an afterthought as we tried to sleep in the army cots that had been set up in rows, with spaces between so we could not talk. The lights were turned down. Aunt Lydia patrolled with an electric cattle prod. No guns, though. Guns were for the guards. In the semi-darkness, we could reach out our arms and touch each other's hands. We learned to lip-read, our heads turned sideways, watching each other's mouths. In this way, we exchanged names from bed to bed. Alma, Janine, Dolores, Moira, June. A chair, a table, a lamp. Above, in the center of the ceiling, a blank space plastered over. There must have been a chandelier once. They've removed anything you could tie a rope to. The bell that measures time is ringing. Time here is measured by bells, as once in nunneries. As in a nunnery, too, there are a few mirrors. I get up, advance my feet in their red shoes, flat-heeled to save the spine. The red gloves are lying on the bed. Everything, except the wings around my face, is red. The skirt is ankle-length, gathered to a flat yoke over the breasts. The sleeves are full. The wings, too, are prescribed. They are to keep us from seeing, but also from being seen. I pick up the shopping basket, walk along the hallway past the sitting room into the kitchen. Rita is here, standing at the table. She's in her usual Martha's dress, dull green, much like mine in shape, long and concealing, but with a bib apron over it, and without the white wings. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow. She is making bread. She sees me. Frowning, she tears out 3 tokens from the token book and hands them to me. The frown isn't personal. It's the red dress she disapproves of and what it stands for. She thinks I may be catching, like a disease or a form of bad luck. Despite her pressed lips, I would like to stay here in the kitchen. Cora might come in carrying her duster, and Rita would make coffee. In the houses of the commanders, there is still real coffee. And we would sit and talk about aches and illness, our feet, our backs. How I used to despise such talk. Now I long for it. At least it was an exchange of sorts. I take the tokens. They have pictures on them of the things they can be exchanged for. Eggs, cheese, a brown thing that's supposed to be a steak. I place them in the zippered pocket in my sleeve where I keep my pass. I go out by the back door into the garden, which is large and tidy, a lawn in the middle, weeping catkins around the edges. The garden is the domain of the commander's wife. She isn't there now, and I start to wonder where she is. I don't like to come upon the commander's wife unexpectedly. I am a reproach to her, and a necessity. We stood face to face for the first time 5 weeks ago, when I arrived at this posting. The guardian from the previous posting brought me to the front door. On first days, we are permitted front doors, but after that we're supposed to use the back. She had a cigarette. She put it between her lips and gripped it there while she lit it. Her lips were thin. The cigarettes must have come from the black market. This gave me hope. She, then, was a woman who might bend the rules. Even now that there is no money, there's always something that can be exchanged. "I want to see as little of you as possible," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am," she snapped. "You're not a Martha." I was disappointed. The wife in my previous posting had spent much of her time in her bedroom. The Marthas said she drank. I wanted this one to be different. I wanted to think I would have liked her in another time and place. But I could see already I wouldn't have liked her. Or she me. "As for my husband," she said, "he's just that, my husband. I want that to be perfectly clear. Till death us do part. It's final." Suddenly she wasn't looking at me. She was looking down at her knuckled, diamond-studded hands. And I knew where I'd seen her before. It was on television when I was 8 or 9, when my mother was sleeping in on Sunday mornings, and I would get up early and flip through the television channels looking for cartoons. Sometimes I would watch the Growing Souls Gospel Hour, where they would tell Bible stories and sing hymns. The lead soprano was called Serena Joy. She could smile and cry at the same time, 2 tears sliding gracefully down her cheek as her voice lifted through its highest notes. The woman sitting in front of me was Serena Joy, or had been once. I walk along the gravel path that divides the lawn. In the driveway, one of the guardians is washing the car. His cap is tilted at a jaunty angle, and his sleeves are rolled to the elbow, showing his forearms, tan but with a stipple of dark hairs. He has a cigarette stuck in the corner of his mouth, which shows that he too has something he can trade on the black market. I know this man's name is Nick. I've heard Rita talking about him. He lives over the garage. Low status. He hasn't been issued a woman. He doesn't rate, some defect, lack of connections. But he acts as if he doesn't care. He's too casual, not servile enough. He looks at me. Then he winks. I drop my head and keep walking. What if I were to report him? Perhaps it was a test to see what I would do. Perhaps he is an eye. I walk to the corner and wait. A shape, red with white wings around the face, a shape like mine, a nondescript woman carrying a basket, comes along the sidewalk towards me. "Blessed be the fruit," she says, the accepted greeting among us. "May the Lord open," I answer, the accepted response. We turn and walk together towards the center of town. We aren't allowed to go there except in twos. This is supposed to be for our protection. The truth is that she is my spy, as I am hers. This woman has been my partner for 2 weeks. Her name is Offred. I don't know what happened to the one before. One day, she simply wasn't there, and this one was in her place. "The war is going well, I hear," she says. "Praise be," I reply. "They've defeated more of the rebels, Baptists. They've smoked them out of a stronghold in the Blue Hills." "Praise be." I don't ask her how she knows. I'm ravenous for news, any news, even if it's false news. It must mean something. We reach the first barrier. The guardians salute us. They are obliged to show respect because of the nature of our service. And we walk on, into the heart of Gilead, where the war cannot intrude. Doctors lived here once, lawyers, university professors. There are no lawyers anymore, and the university is closed. Luke and I used to walk together sometimes along these streets. We used to talk about buying a house like one of these, a big old house, fixing it up. Although we knew we would never afford one, it was a game. Such freedom now seems almost weightless. We turn the corner onto a main street. In front of us is a store where we order dresses. Some people call them habits. Habits are hard to break. We cross the street to a store with another wooden sign, 3 eggs, a bee, a cow. milk and honey. Nobody talks much, though there is a rustling as the women's heads move furtively from side to side. Here, shopping is where you might see someone you've known in the time before, or at the Red Center. If I could see Moira, just see her, know she still exists. It's hard to imagine now, having a friend. As we wait our turn in the line, 2 more women come in, both in the red dresses and the white wings of the handmaids. One of them is vastly pregnant. Her belly under her loose garment swells triumphantly. There is a shifting in the room, a murmur, an escape of breath. Our fingers itch to touch her. She's a magic presence, showing us what can be done. We too can be saved. As I pass, she looks full at me, and I know who she is. She was at the Red Center with me, one of Aunt Lydia's pets. I never liked her. Her name in the time before was Janine. Around the corners of her mouth, there is a trace of a smirk as she glances down to where my own belly lies flat under my robe. Offred and I reach the counter. We hand over our tokens. One guardian enters their numbers into the compubite, while the other gives us the milk, the eggs. We put them in our baskets and move outside onto the street. A group of people comes towards us. They're tourists from Japan. A trade delegation, perhaps, on a tour of the historic landmarks. Each one has his or her camera, his or her smile. I can't help staring. The skirts on the women reach just below the knee, and the legs come out from beneath them, nearly naked in their thin stockings, blatant, the high-heeled shoes with their straps like delicate instruments of torture. I stop walking. Offred stops beside me. She, too, cannot take her eyes off these women. We are fascinated, but also repelled. They seem undressed. It has taken so little time to change our minds about things like this. The tourists come towards us, twittering. Their interpreter steps forward. "Excuse me," he says, "they're asking if they can take your picture." I look down at the sidewalk, shake my head for no. The interpreter turns back to the group. He'll be telling them that the women here have different customs, that to stare at them through the lens of a camera is for them a violation. "Excuse me," the interpreter says again. They ask, "Are you happy?" I can feel their bright black eyes on us. We are secret, forbidden. We excite them. Offred says nothing. There is a silence. But sometimes it's as dangerous not to speak. "Yes, we are happy," I murmur. What else can I say? Offred pauses as if hesitant about which way to go. We already know which way we will take because we always take it. We walk sedately. The sun is out. In the sky there are white, fluffy clouds, the kind that look like headless sheep. We walk to the thing we've come to see. The wall. Today there are 6 more bodies hanging by their necks, their hands tied in front of them, their heads in white bags. We stop together, as if on signal. It doesn't matter if we look. We're supposed to look. Sometimes they'll be there for days, until there's a new batch, so as many people as possible will have the chance to see them. The men wear white coats. Each has a placard hung around his neck to show why he has been executed, a drawing of a human fetus. They were doctors then, in the time before, when such things were legal. Angel makers, they used to call them. Or was that something else? These men are like war criminals. It's no excuse that what they did was legal at the time. Their crimes are retroactive. They have committed atrocities and must be made into examples for the rest. Though this is hardly needed. No woman in her right mind these days would seek to prevent a birth. should she be so lucky as to conceive. What we are supposed to feel towards these bodies is hatred and scorn. What I feel towards them is relief, because none of these men is Luke. Luke wasn't a doctor. Isn't. I feel a tremor in Offred beside me. Is she crying? I can't afford to know. Ordinary, said Aunt Lydia, is what you are used to. This may not seem ordinary to you now, but after a time it will. It will become ordinary. The night is mine. My own time, my time out. Where should I go? Somewhere good. Moira's sitting on the edge of my bed in her purple overalls, one dangly earring, a cigarette between her stubby yellow-stained fingers. Let's go for a beer. You're getting ashes in my bed, I said. I had a paper due the next day. What was it? Psychology, English, economics? We studied things like that then. What's your paper on? Moira asked. I just did one on date rape. Date rape, I said. You're so trendy. It sounds like some kind of dessert. Date rape. Moira said, get your coat. I'm borrowing $5 off you, okay? In a park somewhere, with my mother. Gray sky, 2 ducks in the pond. She said we were going to feed the ducks. But there were some women burning books. That's what she was really there for, to see her friends. She'd lied to me. I turned away, sulking, but the fire drew me back. They must have poured gasoline because the flames shot high, and then they began dumping books and magazines from boxes. Some of them were chanting. Their faces were ecstatic. But then what happened? The good weather holds. It's almost like June. There are 3 new bodies on the wall. We should go back, I say to Offred. I'm always the one to say this. Sometimes I feel that if I didn't say it, she would stay here forever. Without a word, she swivels, as if she's voice-activated, as if she's on little oiled wheels, as if she's on top of a music box. It's a beautiful May day, she says. I feel her waiting for a reply. Yes, I say. Praise be. May Day used to be a distress signal a long time ago in one of those wars we studied in high school. It was Luke who told me about May Day. Mayday, Mayday for pilots whose planes had been hit. Do you know where it comes from? Said Luke. It's French. From Mayday. Help me. We go past the shops to the barrier again. We are passed through. At the corner, Offred turns to me. Under his eye, she says, the right farewell. In the driveway, Nick is polishing the car again. He looks up and begins to whistle. Then he says, nice walk? I nod, but do not answer. He isn't supposed to speak to me. In the garden, the commander's wife is sitting in a chair. Serena Joy. What a stupid name. Her real name was Pam. I read that in a profile on her in a news magazine. She wasn't singing gospel anymore by then. She was making speeches about the sanctity of the home, about how women should stay at home. Serena Joy didn't do this herself. She made speeches instead. But she presented this failure of hers as a sacrifice she was making for the good of all. Luke and I would watch her sometimes on the late-night news. Bathrobes, nightcaps. We'd watch her sprayed hair and her hysteria. The tears she could still produce at will. We thought she was funny. She doesn't make speeches anymore. She has become speechless. She stays in her home, but it doesn't seem to agree with her. How furious she must be, now that she's been taken at her word. She's looking at the tulips. She doesn't turn her head, although she knows I'm there. It's not the husbands you have to watch out for, said Aunt Lydia. It's the wives. Of course they will resent you. It's only natural. Try to pity them. I walk around to the back door, set my basket on the kitchen table, then follow the runner down the long hallway back to the room. There's someone standing in the hall. It is a man, his back to me. He's looking into the room. It's the commander. He isn't supposed to be here. He hears me coming, turns, hesitates, walks forward. Towards me. He is violating custom. What do I do now? I stop. He pauses. I can't see his face. He's looking at me. What does he want? He steps to the side to avoid touching me, inclines his head, is gone. Something has been shown to me, like the flag of an unknown country seen for an instant. It could mean attack. It could mean parley. It could mean the edge of something, a territory. Was he in my room? My room. Someone has lived in this room before me. Someone like me, or so I prefer to believe. I discovered it 3 days after I moved in here. I was exploring the room, section by section, examining each part with the greatest minuteness, when I found it on the cupboard floor. There it was in tiny writing, quite fresh it seemed, scratched with a pin or maybe just a fingernail, in the corner where the darkest shadow fell. No lite te bastardes carborundarum. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it might be Latin. Still, it was a message, and it was in writing, which is forbidden, and it hadn't yet been discovered, except by me, for whom it was intended. It was intended for whoever came next. It pleases me to ponder this message, to think I'm communicating with her, this unknown woman. I wonder who she was, what's become of her. I tried it out on Rita the day I found the message. Who was a woman who stayed in that room, I said, before me? She didn't work out, she said. In what way? What you don't know won't hurt you, was all she would say. Yesterday morning I went to the doctor, was taken by a guardian. I'm taken to the doctor's once a month for tests, urine, hormones, cancer smear, the same as before, except that now it's obligatory. Inside the waiting room, there are other women, 3 of them in red. This doctor is a specialist. Covertly, we regard each other, sizing up each other's bellies. Is anyone lucky? When I'm called, I go through the doorway into the inner room. It's white, featureless like the outer one, except for a folding screen with a gold eye painted on it. After I fill the small bottle left ready for me, I take off my clothes and leave them folded on the chair. When I'm naked, I lie down on the examining table, on the sheet of chilly, crackling, disposable paper. I pull the second sheet up over my body. At neck level, there's another sheet suspended from the ceiling. It intersects me so that the doctor will never see my face. When I'm arranged, I fumble for the bell. After a minute, the door opens, footsteps come in, there is breathing. He isn't supposed to speak to me except when it's absolutely necessary. But this doctor is talkative. How are we getting along, he says. The sheet is lifted from my skin. A cold finger, rubber-clad and jellied, slides into me. I am poked and prodded. The finger retreats, enters otherwise, withdraws. Any pain, honey? He calls me honey. No, I say. My breasts are fingered in their turn, a search for ripeness, rot. Then the voice, very soft, close to my head. I could help you, he says, whispers. What? I say. Shh, he says. I could help you. I've helped others. How? I say. Does he know something? Has he seen Luke? Can he bring him back? How do you think? He says. Is that his hand sliding up my leg? He's taken off the glove. The door's locked. No one will come in. They'll never know it isn't his. He lifts the sheet. His face is covered by the white mask, regulation. 2 brown eyes, a nose, a head with brown hair on it. His hand is between my legs. Most of those old guys can't make it anymore, he says, or they're sterile. I gasp. He said a forbidden word. Sterile. There is no such thing as a sterile man. There are only women who are fruitful and women who are barren. That's the law. Lots of women do it, he goes on. You want a baby, don't you? You're soft. It's time. Today or tomorrow would do it. Why waste it? It'd only take a minute, honey. I hesitate. He's offering himself to me, his services. I hate to see what they put you through, he murmurs. It's genuine sympathy, and yet he's enjoying this, sympathy and all. His hand is moving on me nervously, impatient. It's too dangerous, I say. No, I can't. The penalty is death. But they have to catch you in the act. What are the odds? Is the room bugged? Who's waiting just outside the door? His hand stops. Think about it, he says. I've seen your chart. You don't have a lot of time left, but it's your life. Thank you, I say. I must leave the impression that I'm not offended, that I'm open to suggestion. He could fake the tests, report me for cancer, for infertility, have me shipped off to the colonies with the unwomen. He pats my thigh, withdraws himself behind the hanging sheet. Next month, he says. I put on my clothes again. My hands are shaking. Why am I frightened? I've crossed no boundaries. I've given no trust, taken no risk. All is safe. It's the choice that terrifies me. A way out. A salvation.